It feels like someone's died.
Which is mad because we hadn't lost the league game since. This is the whole mess of the situation. Is it feels so catastrophic, and it feels so big, but we haven't lost the league game since New Year's Eve.
These are the standards.
Yeah.
These are the standards. So yes, guys, welcome back to the Cannon Podcast. Look, we are all suffering as a fan base today. Every fan is suffering, and I think it really hit in the morning. You know, yesterday it was a bit numb. It hit in the morning, seeing the table and seeing what could have happened. I think that's what hurts more than anything, seeing how close we were if we had won that game. Because it was a game, look, let's be honest, Villa are a fantastic team, but we expected to win that game at the Emirates Stadium. And if we had won that game, we would have gone top again and gone clear Liverpool, and it was all perfect. But it wasn't perfect, and we lost the game 2-0. So, Alex, we'll go to you first, and we'll say, what was your initial thought? Like, morning after the game, how do you feel right now in terms of, is it salvageable? Is it over? Give me some copium, please.
Well, I think we're in a bit of a unique situation. I was on a run earlier. I was thinking about this, because I run, guys. And I find it's a really strange knife edge we're on, and I'd be interested to hear your guys' opinions whether this is a unique situation or not. But because I feel like it is, because there's two strands of analysis that can perfectly sit by each other, completely in a valid way, and also feel like they completely contradict each other. On the one hand, we are up against the greatest Premier League team, in my opinion, of all time, who are setting the pace. We have, we look at all the points tallies, look at all the, all the underlying numbers, everything we speak about on this podcast. The fact we haven't lost since December. All these things. We're on a long project, etc., etc. And so if we won this league, or we won the Champions League, we can look at ourselves and go, are we one of the great? It's not a ridiculous thing to say. We're one of the great Prem teams to win within this era. Against that, in the same way that Klopp is one of the and Liverpool are one of the great Prem teams. To win against this Pep Guardiola team is to do something absolutely special. So there's that, which I think is, wherever you sit on that, it's not completely mental. And there's also 100% completely valid analysis to go, if Arsenal, and I think this is the real thing here, isn't it? We're all projecting forward. If Arsenal lose this game, go and lose on Wednesday, drop more points in the title race, and maybe even drop, let's have, say, one more draw. Let's say we draw away at Spurs and win the rest of our games. It's also completely valid to ask, managers into his 5th season then, no trophies. This group of players seem to, whenever there is a line, to get over, something seems to be stopping us. Something, yes, okay, we're improving, but why can't we get over lines? What is the problem with this team? Was it a physical issue? Why is the manager sort of tinkering again, at a time? So I'm not saying I sit on that side. I don't. I sit on the previous side. But there is completely valid analysis and completely valid questions to be asked about this team. And I don't think any other team are in that sort of scenario where it is just boom or bust. It's like, if Man United went and lost every single game before the end of the season, or Man United went and won every game before the end of the season, nothing really changes. Really, not the perception of Ten Hag, not the perception of the players. If Chelsea went and did that, if Spurs went and did that, nothing really changes. If City lost the league, would City fans, would the perception of Pep Guardiola really change? It feels like the margins are so big for this Arsenal team, and I think that's kind of what's producing these massive emotional reactions. So that's where I sit, and I'm happy to be proved wrong. It's just a kind of a hypothesis, but yeah, that's where I'm at today.
Yeah, it is very weird because, as you say, we're only 2 points off, and goal difference is in Arsenal's favour as it stands. So there is a saving grace there. If we could catch City up as single as I think so much as a City draw could change things again. But let's talk about the game itself, George. What went wrong? Because in the first half, it looked like it was a normal Arsenal performance. We're breaking them down, we're making our chances, we're dominating, controlling, even winning on field tilt. Second half, it was a calamity. I don't even think Scott Willis has posted a field tilt. So
I don't think he has.
Yeah, that's how bad this game was, George. So what happened in the second half? Was it as simple as something wrong tactically, something wrong in terms of the lineup, or was it more that the players were absolutely shattered after the game against Bayern in the midweek?
I think there's definitely scope to say that physically there was a difference between the first and the second half. I was able to watch the game probably for a good reason without the emotion on it. I had a rewatch. Unfortunately, couldn't watch it live, and there was a distinct difference to the team's pressing. There was a distinct difference to the team's urgency in possession. And there was definitely almost a lethargy in our own possession in kind of in build up, I think, in the second half. Whereas in the first half, there was a lot more willingness to look forward. I do want to talk about the first half because people talk about how it being a really typical Arsenal performance. And guys, the manner in which we left goals on the pitch in the first half is unacceptable, because the story of this match was always going to be one where people were tired. We've had something like we've had something like, I don't know, what is it, 3 or 4 games inside 10 days. And the team is supposed to be playing for 90 minutes. I'm sorry, that's not going to happen in any title run-in. Liverpool, Man City, there's going to be moments, by the way, where they have 20 to 30 minutes in their legs and they need to manage the rest. That's going to happen. So really, for me, while a lot of people are saying that we lost the game in the second half, if we score 1 or 2 of those chances where Kai Havertz has gone through on goal 2 or 3 times with the ball over the top, and we've done the exact play that we need to against a mid-block that everyone's now bemoaning we struggle against. And I think the lesson of this season, by the way, if you're going to look at it in a whole, is Fulham, twice against Villa, Chelsea, Porto. What is the unification of all of these things? There's one game model that Arsenal do struggle with. It is a well-constructed mid-block. And, you know, I think what really was difficult is I almost feel Zinchenko was an analogy for this game as a whole. And in the first half, I think he was really crucial to exploiting that mid-block, sending Havertz on some key runs in the channel. And then I look at some of the defensive performance as a whole, especially on the first goal where I find him in the right back position, which alone isn't the issue. But when you're defending across, he's not supporting Havertz in there, and Declan Rice is the left back for the first goal. Okay, it can happen. You get stretched. That happens. The second goal with Jorginho, in terms of trying to force a line between the pass at like the 86th minute, and the only person running back to meet Ollie Watkins is Emile Smith-Rowe. That is not Arsenal. Like, when we look in the last couple performances, this idea that teams with one pass can breach our back line has been the antithesis of everything that has been good about the 2024 run. So I think there needs to be a discussion about Mikel's ability for me to rotate. I mean, taking off Martin Odegaard and taking off Ben White as well, by the way. 2 huge dynamics to the consistency of Arsenal, and replacing them effectively with players that you could say had a part to play in some of the goals without taking out some of your weak point is something that you're going to question from a fan perspective. But again, I can't look at the first half and think that was acceptable, right? Like, I mean, we all know the Trossard chance, but guys, it wasn't just the Trossard chance. There was chances with even Bukayo Saka threw on goal. Martin Odegaard plays a beautiful pass. I can't remember the minute. I think it was later on in the half. And sure, it's a tight angle, but there's no cut back into the box. There's
Jesus' header. Yeah,
Jesus' back post header, which is the Trossard chance. The Kai Havertz, like I said, he's been through on goal a couple times. Guys, that's three goals you leave on the pitch. And I'm sorry, you enter the half 2-0 up. That's a very different position for Villa. And that for me is worse than the moments that we pick on the goals, because those haven't happened as much. And we know how poor they are. They're poor, but the team's allowed to be tired. I accept that. But you need, when you're on top, you need to make it count. And that is something that maybe are the valid questions in a run-in. When you talk about lines and you talk about everything, when Arsenal are on top and they're able to dictate proceedings, can they make it count consistently enough? That's been a question. So I'm left frustrated. I think the Villa game in general was a game I saw in the run-in. I didn't know when it would come, whether it would be Villa or somebody else. And ironically, I think a lot of the fan base is being a little bit more catastrophic because they see it as impossible to go through another 6-run game of being perfect. And so that was the reason. And the irony, guys, is I almost feel like if this was against Spurs and it was a draw, it would be acceptable. If you dropped points against a Big Six side, the whole idea was, I think people bemoaned December and previous matches because they expected points dropped in this point, and we don't have a cushion. So we haven't done that. We haven't allowed ourselves to have that cushion, and that's part of the frustration that's seeping in. But it's not fair because the second half of the season, again, this is the first time we've been in a losing minute, guys. Not even just a position, a losing minute. This was the first time in 2024 that Arsenal have done that. So the run we've been on is brilliant. And a game can happen like this. But I do think a lot of the frustration is carryover from December, personally, if I was trying to put myself in a position of other fans.
I think that a massive thing after the game was, in terms of fans and whether Mikel could have improved on, is how he selected the team. And specifically, Havertz not playing as a striker, Jorginho not playing alongside Rice in midfield, Kiwior not playing as a left-back. Alex, do you think Mikel Arteta made a mistake by not playing those players where they were playing in terms of the form and the team, the way that Arsenal were playing, especially in terms of Kai up front versus Kai as a number 8?
Look, if Trossard's foot moves an angle, a couple of angles to the left, we're having a completely different conversation. So I look at how we played in that first half, and I think that's the drop off in the second half is the much bigger issue to me over the lineup. Like maybe he got the lineup wrong, but I'm not looking at that going that was the reason we lost the game. Look, I think I want to go back to something George said about the physicality. It's because I think I said this on the instant reaction. Football becomes for a lot of people a TV show, and it's not a TV show. It's a physical game. It's a thing where when you're playing it yourself, you realise how much of the game
no scripting.
Say again?
There's no scripting. It's not a storyline where it's like everything's perfect and it's just like that's the evil guy and that's the good guy and that's the bad. Nah, none of that.
Exactly. No, you're absolutely right. And there isn't a script and there isn't this just because you have to outfight people and you have to outrun them as well as being better than them in the final third and finishing off your chances and so on and so forth. So it's a physical battle. And then we come to so in looking at that lineup now, to come back to the question, Raya, White, Saliba, Gabriel, Ødegaard, Rice, Havertz, Saka have all played so much football. And I come back to then the manager, because if we saw the physical drop off in the second half so quickly, which I think was a large part of it, I'd be interested to hear what George thought sort of tactically went on. The first sub he made was at 67 minutes. Guys, there was a problem from the 50th minute. There was issue that's 15 minutes of a game where we're losing ground, we're losing territory, we're losing confidence, and you can see that these players are knackered. They're done. Now, for me, we can look at individual players. Are they recovering well enough? Whatever, it doesn't matter. Actually, that's on the manager. That is on the manager to go. To look back in the summer and go. We need the legs to get through a season. But it feels like, again, this is why I come back to it. If we won that game, we go on to win the league. He's a genius and he's got everything right. And if we don't and we fall apart because of something physically, again, it's a really valid question to ask. Why are we third season in a row looking at Ben White going, why don't we have someone who can come in and do an approximation of your job? He's playing through a grade 3 hamstring tear against Newcastle. Same, last season again, he's having to, at the end of the season, we're completely reliant on his legs and they're starting to go, and it's the same again. So for me, there's a managerial question, but I can't get past the sort of how fine the margins are. I think we are in the situation we are, and so we have to look at what we can do. And I think the big thing that I feel is if we go on Wednesday and we beat Bayern and we go and beat Wolves and City draw, which is a completely, I think, where are they? Fulham away? Which is a completely...
I think they have Brighton away, actually.
Oh, really? Okay, well, they've got some tricky games coming up. That is a completely possible scenario. In fact, you could make, without the City one, you can maybe argue two of those results are the likely scenario in terms of how, I think we are the better team than Bayern. It just depends how we manage the fixture. So it's not over, but what we're doing is we're projecting forward. We're going, as George sort of said, that's not going to happen is what we feel. We're not going to go on the same sort of run we've come on from January to now. City aren't going to drop points. We're sort of, all of those feelings of it's over. Where does that really come from? It comes from the bar being so high that we know any mistakes are going to be punished. So I don't know. I can't get away from the fact that I feel we can look at, to come back to your question, we can look at the lineup, we can look at certain things here and there, but it just, for me, the margins feel so small. What can we control? And I think maybe the substitutions and the physical game itself might be something we can talk about.
football's a game all about narratives, especially in fan bases nowadays, on social media specifically. What's the narrative after this game? And I think my issue is this whole calamity that, now Mikel needs to, not everyone says, but Mikel might need to go. He might not be the guy to get us over the line. All these narratives that are building right now. I think the most important thing for Arsenal now is the next 2 games. Because we've lost games in the past, but the issue for us in the past is we don't lose one. It's 1, 2 and 3. And if we go on that again, then fans will say, look, we've bottled it. Whereas if you can go to Bayern, a difficult away ground, and obviously get a result there, maybe get through to the Champions League semi-finals, fans can go, you know what, this team it has improved from last year. It's not the same as where, they actually fell apart. And then with the fact that we have everyone fit and available, I have confidence that it's possible. But in terms of, this game itself, George, and the title race itself, do you feel like Arsenal can get back into it? Is it a possibility, or is it more of an unlikely possibility?
Of course it is. We just saw Liverpool drop unlikely points to Palace. I mean, this idea that both, or not just both, all 3 teams were going to go perfect to the end of the season, it is ridiculous, and I will maintain it. I think City will drop points as well. The thing is, it's just a matter of who can be the most consistent ultimately, because I think all 3 teams have this potential. The schedule is unforgiving for everybody. And I think this physical drop-off is going to be something that every single manager is going to face. The problem is, I think you're looking at a squad at least, and I'll just keep it from an Arsenal perspective, that I feel that squad management has been something that Mikel has a weakness for. He trusts players in moments. And he has a certain group of players that he'll trust, then a certain other group of players that he finds he needs a reason to trust. And that's going to be the question, because I don't even think it's just this game, mate. Like, effective rotation within the squad has been a problem. For example, I look at a player like Reece Nelson, and I look at a player like Emile Smith-Rowe, who comes on for the last 15 minutes. I look at a player like Tomiyasu, who's now coming back.
Yeah.
Tomiyasu's played 694 minutes, I believe, for Arsenal, and 615 minutes for Japan this season. That's not on.
Fabio Vieira.
Fabio Vieira, like Thomas Partey. You're looking at Jorginho, by the way, being able to play this many minutes at his age in this kind of intensity, by the way. And the way that we play, I feel, is quite focused on intensity in the middle of the park. That is something that is a question. And so I just feel that Mikel has to show us a different level of squad management in these next 5 to 6 games. Like, we talk about what kind of results we need to get. I need to see Mikel be proactive in terms of catching this physicality drop-off, because it's coming. It's unavoidable, and it's not something that, by the way, any team is going to bemoan their fitness staff for. I mean, lads, how many games is April? If we go, I forget. I know we looked at it in March, but it's got to be something like 10 games.
We've got a game every 3 days, basically.
Essentially,
So
what does that work out to?
In April, we played Luton, we've played Brighton, we played Bayern, we played Villa, and we still have Bayern, Wolves, Chelsea, Spurs, and potentially a semi-final to go.
So, what is that, 9?
I think that's 9, yeah.
9. So nine games in a month. After a season that we've put so much effort in, does it warrant being able to, I don't know, rotate, or being able to want to take off your captain and give him a rest? Well, yeah, absolutely it does. But for example, I look at Luton. Why is Ben White playing almost 90 minutes, but this is the game that we decide to take him off in? That's the decision making here that's not correct. And Luton, you gave a favorable game situation where you were up in the first half. So this idea of taking Ben White off in the 60th, I don't have a problem with it. It's smart management. But why are you doing it at 0-0 at a game so that you can already see the team losing physicality, and you're taking off, I'm sorry, one of the most physical players in the squad? That's a decision that I look at and I say, I'm not in support of. So when I look at what Villa did differently, I know, Bhavs, you asked me earlier, I'll be honest, I don't think Emery is lying. I didn't see a tactical change. They replaced Diaby and Leon Bailey, he doesn't do anything different than Diaby is doing. They haven't changed shape. And I think you just have to look at how intense Kai Havertz was running, who, by the way, has played a lot of minutes. And, he definitely drops off. And I don't think that, look, there's some issues I feel with Zinchenko about the line, by the way. If you look at a ton of moments in this game, the defensive line is compromised because Zinchenko is deeper than the other three. That's going to happen because I feel as though that he's afraid of his defensive frailties. You accept those things because hopefully he's enough of a bonus on the ball to kind of offset those moments. But I do think in a tired team that's looking to maintain a high line, if you're going to have somebody that's out of sync and constantly dropping the line deep, it's giving an opportunity for there to be outlets. Lastly, I'll say Martinelli, Eddie, and Kedia. I look at this front line and it needed kind of pace and it needed an outlet very quickly for you to hit up. I think that we didn't exploit that mid block enough in the second half. There were moments that I feel as though we could have stretched the pitch with more long switches, which again is something that I'll bring up. It's been a weakness for this Arsenal side for far too long. We are something like 17th or 18th in the league for long switches. And when you're facing a mid block like this, especially one that's tired, and you have an outlet like Martinelli who hasn't started the game and has been fresh for the last couple, stick him on the last line and send him in the channels. Doesn't have to be perfect. David Raya, go long. Stop with the build-up there. Go long earlier and recognize that the team is not playing with urgency. So let's not play in our own half. Let's play in zones that we prefer. And ironically, that's what we've been doing all season. And so there were just moments in this half that I just felt like the manager, the players, and the team got comfy and lazy. And it was lulled into a period where these are good teams that we're facing. They're going to hurt you. So I'm frustrated. I just feel as though that some of the decisions that we could have made as a squad could have been taken a little bit earlier, could have been taken prior to this game. And what I am looking down the line and looking forward is to make sure that we're more proactive in our assessing of these situations, both in a physicality sense, both in a squad management sense, but also as we look forward, let's play the game that is asked of us. And I think at times we don't do that well.
And this is the knife edge that I think we're on, is that, this could be the isolated game where we get stuff wrong, the players aren't quite physically at it or whatever, and then we look back and we go, that was the one game where it kind of went awry. Or we look back at the end of the season and go, with no trophies, we're looking back saying, where did it all go wrong? And we're looking at, Ben White and Martin Odegaard playing 90 minutes against Luton. These will be the things that I don't want to go too far into it now and go, that's the problem, because it could be an isolated thing, but we're projecting forward, right? And that's kind of the knife edge. I do want to say, just looking at Man City's fixtures, we could be, we play 2 Premier League games before they play their next. So they play at Brighton away on Thursday, the 25th of April, by which point we could be on 77 points and they could be on 73 points. We could be 4 points clear of Man City by that point. So, and then they'd have 2 games in hand, of course. But, we're not out of this, So this is the knife edge that I keep trying to say. It's like, now is the point where we have a reaction. And maybe we can start talking about Wednesday, because now is the point where we need the reaction.
We will talk about Wednesday, but I want to specifically focus on the mid-blocks. Because, as George said, is a big issue for Arsenal. And we've seen it this season in the teams we played against. So I want to ask you, Alex, are there specific players that Mikel isn't quite using right now, or correctly using, that could be used better against mid-blocks? We've talked about, obviously, Martinelli, but maybe players off the bench. Maybe a Fabio Vieira type of player. Yep.
Yeah, again, this is all the potential analysis that we can do if it all goes that way. But, for now we can look at it and say, yeah, Fabio Vieira, Tomiyasu, why are you giving Tomiyasu a new contract if you don't trust him to come into these scenarios and make a difference? I don't understand that. Fabio Vieira, why have we invested that kind of money? We could have a whole discussion about Fabio Vieira. I know people know my opinions on him. Look, if Mikel thought he was going to make a difference yesterday, they would have played him. It's that simple, and maybe another manager would think he makes a difference, but the point is Mikel doesn't. So that is a concern. I think with the mid-blocks, I want to point to the switches. I also want to point to the adventure in possession. I still don't think there's a moment going round of Villa where there's a simple pass for, I think it's Tielemans out to Alex Moreno, and he just fires it into Luka Dean, or it could be another player or something. But I remember watching that and just going, that is an adventurous Villa team. That's the team that wants to take risks. And I wonder, Saliba, Gabriel, Rice, I think at times you can project pressure onto the team and say, oh, they're feeling the pressure, but maybe. But regardless, I think this is a season-wide issue. I've always felt not only do we not have the receivers in a block, a la Emil Smith-Rowe or whoever you want to pick, but I also don't think we have the adventure in possession to break a block down. I thought we were trying to get in behind yesterday in the way with Kai Havertz, but again, it's the efficiency of when we go in behind, what do we do? And I still feel we don't have the right balance of players who are going to, there's a moment when Kai Havertz gets through and he is in, and he still tries to connect, and he tries to slow down, he tries to bring someone else into play. It's like, mate, just shoot across your body and get a goal or go for goal. And those moments are extremely frustrating because, mid blocks are a problem for us. They stop us playing in the areas we want to play in. And Villa did really, really well, and they stop that kind of central progression. But there is always space. There is always spaces. Wherever you play on a football pitch, there's always spaces. So for me, it's about exploiting those. And I think it's not even necessarily that I think the central areas we can exploit more, but especially in the wide areas, are we asking our wide players to take people on 1v1? Because when there is a mid-block, you can get your winger isolated. Are we asking, once we do get in behind, are we asking our forward players to be as ruthless as they can, or are they cutting back and trying to connect with one another? So I think it's a slight sort of tactical thing, but I also think a lot of it is execution.
I think there's also a player. I've made a post on Twitter about. I've really analyzed the front line. What is the biggest missing cog? We have so many traits, but what is the biggest missing cog? Transitional inevitability is it for me. When you talk about Kai Havertz, Heung-min Son, Marcus Rashford, Martinelli, Victor Osimhen, those players get those chances. I'd love to ask you guys, how many of those through balls do they score? Or at least put on target? Don't even score. How many of those opportunities do they get on target? I can assure you almost all of them. And that is the difference. And so I think I've seen enough times of us being able to play the ball through in those occasions that while I agree with you, Alex, I think we can be a lot more adventurous with our passing in the middle of the park, generally speaking. It's not as though we get no opportunities. We get them and we fail with them in terms of making them into good ones. And so I see Kai Havertz and I say, okay, there's a lot of good things there, but there isn't that inevitability that I feel secure that you're going to really test the keeper. I'm telling you, if I'm looking at this front line, how many of us believe that we've got an inevitable runner that when given space and time is going to test the opposition keeper in the box at least? And by the way, you're looking at the Jesus back post cross. Does Victor Osimhen hit that on target?
Yeah. I made it. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, so it's about understanding what part of Arsenal do we lack, and that's the 6-yard box. That's the part that I'm really concerned with. We cut back to great efficiency. We have people able to arrive in that spot. We have players that do it. So I'm not asking to recruit something like that. I do want to be able to move players. I look at being able to move Diogo Carlos, who had a very good game, but I think for the most part, it was just physical. It was just a physical edge. And I'm looking at myself, do I have a player that I believe can move that player effectively and consistently? I don't. Like, there are times I feel Saka and Martinelli, if given space, they can run onto it. But themselves, I don't feel like they're being able to move the line. And that's not fair on them because systemically, they're asked to hold width and they're asked to hold different areas. We don't platform these guys in the middle of the park. And so when I'm sitting there and I'm asking myself, okay, do I have a reference in the middle of the park that can move players against these mid blocks, that can offer a transitional inevitability to attack the space where it is? Because mid block space is behind. It is. It just naturally is where the space is. So do I have a player that I believe, i.e. a supercharged Eddie Nketiah? Do I have that player in my squad? I don't. And the reason I make that Eddie point is not because of the player himself, but the quality he offers in terms of being able to run channels, hold the ball up, and be an effective physical outlet. That's something that I just feel like this team lacks. We need to recruit it, but it's a frustration. It's a frustration that I think this front line is missing.
We're so associative. I've made this point in a recent video. it's funny because we look like a team without their star striker, but I'm actually not sure signing a star striker is the answer. I really don't think it is. I think it's about freeing up what we already have and also adding different profiles and adding the profile that George mentioned in terms of a transition player, someone who can move centre-backs in a different way. But that person can come in and score 15 goals. I don't actually think it's about adding that 30-goal-a-season striker. For me, I did some numbers for the video. The last 10-game sample, Man City have had 10 goals, 10 in their last 10, where someone has just pulled something out of nothing. A ball's broken someone on the edge of the box and they've hit it top bins, or it's been a free kick, or Doku does just receives on the left. He's got 5 players to beat, goes and dribbles and puts it in the back of the net. Arsenal, and so then when that's not happening for all of our players, you can look at whether we have those players. I actually happen to think we do, and possibly developing the players who can go and do that. But I think they have it in them. For me, it's about the environment they're in. And for me, I think Arteta has just gone a touch too far over to associative. He's gone a touch too far over to, don't try that. There was one shot from distance, Declan Rice, which was a spooner. But one shot from distance yesterday when we're trying to break down a team. That is mental to me. There's one moment where, I can't remember Saka trying to take on his man to get into the box to have a shot himself. He might take on his man to get a cross in, or Martinelli might take on his man to connect with someone, but take on the man to get into the box, to do something, to Martin Odegaard creating a bit of separation and having a shot. All these things, they may not work in the moment, but they show Aston Villa and a lot of opposition that we have different options. We have different ways of getting at you. If we can't connect in the box, okay, well, we'll have a shot from the edge of the box, or one of our wide players will get at you. That's our issue. And yeah, it's something to solve. And I think it's partly Mikel and partly something we can solve going forward, but also something we need to partly look at in the market.
Do we see this game as a one-off, or do we see it as more of a, something that's been coming? Because obviously, look, as Alex and George have said, and we all know this, first defeat in 2024. It is not a space or time to be calamitous and go over the top. So let's talk about going into the future, going into Bayern. Massive game on Wednesday, Champions League quarterfinal. Treat it like it's a 0-0, let's just say. Can we go to the Allianz and get a result?
Of course we can. Without a doubt, we can. This idea that you're going to make a pattern of Arsenal losing when they haven't been in a losing position in all of 2024 is something that, I can't get behind. It was a poor game. We lick our wounds. And, ironically, we play more like we do in the first half. I think we win, and we win well. You look at Bayern, they're not the most physically robust team right now. Brilliant position in terms of their entire left-hand side being out. Kingsley Coman getting an injury is absolutely massive for their outlet potential. Davies out with a yellow card. I think that they themselves are injured. They're licking their own wounds, having just lost the league title officially to Bayer Leverkusen. So I think...
Granit Xhaka.
There's...
Did you see his goal, by the way?
Unbelievable. But that's what I'm talking about. Sorry.
Look, he...
So you're saying let's re-sign Xhaka?
Yes, yeah.
Don't get me started on what I have feelings about, where I feel if he was in this team, where we would be with Declan Rice. But I get kind of distracted with that. I think with the Allianz, I'll make the point right now. I think we absolutely are ahead and are at a canter. A Declan Rice and Granit Xhaka partnership, who again, he doesn't miss games consistently across the season. We're in a title, and we're winning the title, in my opinion. And I'd have that over Havertz. If I didn't have Havertz and I just had Granit Xhaka, and we played the exact same way, I feel that this team is able to control matches more effectively.
I hate that. I agree with you, George. I agree with you.
But we can't cry over spilt milk in a sense. And you did ask the question about the Allianz, so we'll have to stay there. There's a lot of ways that I think Thomas Tuchel could approach this game. And if I was, a coach of Bayern, I don't know if he's going to play Matthias Tell, who I think has a part to play in this tie. And, he's a brilliant youngster that, Bayern seem to love and say they have a lot of faith in, but Thomas Tuchel doesn't seem to. And in order to replace that entire, Serge Gnabry, by the way, also injured, not just Coman and Davies gone. So in order to replace that second outlet, Sane is going to play on the right. You're going to have Kimmich come in terms of an inverted fullback. You know what to expect down that side. Don't play Kivior again, please. You're away. Tomiyasu, you got a contract, you got to play. And I'm sorry, you have one major skill. And that's not to be pejorative and to demean Tomiyasu, but the main superpower you have is our best 1v1 defensive fullback. You need to be able to play this game. If you can't play against Sane, then how many more games in a season do we actually need you for in the squad? I would argue this is probably one of the very few, if you isolate them in a season, you would say that's a Tomiyasu game when we talk about how there are different starting 11s. So he has to play. Then the opposite side is you'd argue that they absolutely need pace. And so do they go with Guerrero or do they go with Mateus Tell? Personally, if I was trying to hurt Arsenal, I'd put Tell. I think he poses a much different question mark for us. But I have a feeling he won't. And I don't believe that he will play him because he hasn't trusted him all season. So that's going to be the story of the match. Can we more effectively use our wide areas? Was Martinelli being saved against Villa for this game? I guess we'll find out. I'll be very angry if I don't see him in the starting 11 because I felt against Villa he was the one player that I isolated as saying he could help us here. And if you're not going to play him from the start, it must be with a chance to focus on Bayern. So I hope I see that because I think in this type of game away, by the way, on the break with the counterattack, I think that the home crowd is going to be on Bayern to produce, and Arsenal should have a very mature performance in terms of allowing the game to come to them. And I have the opposite advice as that I had at the Emirates. I don't believe I'd like to see us as gung-ho as I did. I actually, away, that's when I would assume the pragmatism. I was fine at home to press. I don't want to press away. The one thing I will say, though, I do feel, especially with this loss, the longer Arsenal go 0-0, the more nervy I feel the team will be. So I'm really balancing the mentality approach, where I feel going man for man is probably the wrong thing on a tactical level for what I'd like to see. But mentally, do these boys need that apple to dangle in front of them to get themselves up? There is scope for that. There is scope. And that's the balance, by the way, of a manager where you probably select a tactic that you don't feel is best against this particular team, but maybe best for what the team needs in the moment. And that's what I'm questioning myself. I don't have the answer. I'm not being paid to do that. But if I had a choice, I feel as though that we're approaching something like that. And if you guys are asking me, I don't want it to be another 3-game run. How do I stem that? My answer is probably, by the way, to press, even though I've said I don't want to do it. I think this team needs a reason to fight. And when they're not given reasons to fight, they tend to take that option. So I'm worried if mentally this team needs to press, even though tactically I don't think that's the best plan.
Look, we often talk about how Arsenal are different to last season and how we've improved. I think this is the biggest time to show it, though. Because losing a game is normal, it happens, but the issue for Arsenal in the past is we don't respond correctly. And I think we've got the perfect chance to respond to reach a Champions League semi-final. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. Because I think what not only does it revitalises the entire club. Fans gone. Maybe if the league, isn't in our hands anymore, we've still got the Champions League to look forward to, and there's things to go forwards. So let's talk about 11s. Starting 11 for Arsenal. Now, we know David Raya's going to start in goal. But a back four. Ben White, obviously a right back because as long as he is fit and available. Saliba and Gabriel, left back. As George says, is it as easy as Tomiyasu? Oh, imagine Mikel starts Zinchenko. Would you just get him? Could you imagine the meltdown on social media if Zinchenko starts?
Yeah. Well, can I ask? I actually want, because I want Alex to speak on this too. Last season, you couldn't say a bad word about Zinchenko, and I felt like I was getting attacked, despite feeling that there was that level of fragility. But now this season, the tide has turned. Like, where do you go wrong with the Zinchenko analysis as a fan in this season? Because I think you'd prefer Tomiyasu as well. We said it even last game, but why is there such a swing on Zinchenko from last season to this season, in your opinion?
Well, I think it's some of the analysis that we've done previously on Zinchenko in terms of the lack of importance, but there's something in terms of how we play and the variety in which we play. But I think it's a little bit further now. I look at Zinchenko and I think we're a big side. We're a team of big boys now, and he doesn't look at home anymore. He looks like the odd one out, and especially when we press man for man, that intensity that Ben White if Saka's jumping in on the fullback as the ball comes over, and Ben White's stepping up on the opposition left winger, on the flip side, you don't see that level of physical dominance from Zinchenko, and I think it unconsciously and consciously kind of plays on Arsenal fans' minds. I think also you get, for want of a better phrase, no, I don't want to use that phrase. It's not appropriate. But you get that sort of feeling that you get reminded of what's happened before. You get reminded of what's happened before, and you get a sense of sort of deja vu. And moments like yesterday, when he's playing around trying to nutmeg Tielemans on the edge of that box, just show me that this is a guy who has he learned? Has he? Because I actually think Zinchenko 1v1 has improved this season. Not loads, but I think he's improved a little bit. His defensive anticipation is really, really good. His aerial duels have always been really, really, really good. If he can read a scenario, Zinchenko's a fine defender. But it's such an obvious accident waiting to happen. And it's happened so many times now. And he's not doing proactive things to stop those types of accidents happening. It feels like we've done everything we can to help you, mate, and now you're not helping yourself. I think that's why the tide is slightly turning. When you see those moments like he's playing around the edge of the box against Watford. Okay, mate, you've got 5-6 seconds there to think about what you're going to do with Tielemans, and you're still trying to nutmeg him, you're still trying to play. Just get rid of it. And I think once you do that, and also with what I said earlier about the physicality, I think Arsenal fans are just at the end of their tether with him, and I think it's understandable. And there was a bit of a narrative going around yesterday, like, it doesn't help him having the fans on his back. In the end, the fans are a reflection of... The fans are the reason you play. So if you're not convincing the fans, you're not convincing the fan, yeah, maybe they shouldn't be on your back. And maybe, for the optimal scenario, they shouldn't be on your back. But I tell you what, mate, you're paid 200 grand a week. You're the one who should be showing the fans something different. You're the ones who should be saying, okay, you don't believe me 1v1? Fine, I'll show you. I'm going to lock up this winger. I'm not going to mess around the edge of my box. I'm not going to make the same mistakes again and again and again. It's like, I don't know. It's like if I was always half an hour late to recording with you guys, right? I was always half an hour late, and I am. And I turned up, and then, you guys were like, mate, you need to be on time. And I started having a go at you. It's like, no. You have to show us that you're going to be on time before you get the support of the people. You have to show us that you've improved before you get the, oh, mate, you're doing really well. So I don't understand this sort of, we've got to support him. No. He has to show us. If he's making the same mistakes over and over and over again and not learning, I don't know. I understand it. And I think I'll back up.
And my frustration with this whole thing is, mate, like after you've just talked so brilliantly about that, can I ask you, does that shout as an experienced senior leader in the dressing room? One that has won titles, somebody that's able to mentally do that. Like, I don't want to hammer a player because I feel as though I've been really critical of this for over a year with him. The frustration with me, guys, is not making a mistake. It's the not learning factor. And from a player of that experience, from a player, by the way, who has won titles, one of the few in the squad to do it, you don't expect that. Like, I think this whole theory of experience gets overplayed as a narrative sometimes, but the one thing I do believe in, experience allows you to play differently than your norm because you have to fix something that's going wrong in a team. That for me is experience. Not that you're 28 years old with X amount of caps. No. It's about, listen, the game calls for something different. I'm going to be different. I'm going to be different for this team and get us over the line. That, for me, is the definition of real experience in a squad. And ironically, I'll bring him up. Granit Xhaka, when I start talking about it and I look at the analysis of last season in terms of how he had to adapt himself differently, something that we all have seen him not be able to do consistently, by the way. He became something else for this team. That's experience that helps. And I think people feel similarly to Jesus now. And there's a conversation where 12 months ago, these two were the reason that they got us from a top 4 to a title challenge. And now this debate, and sorry, I'm sure you want to go through the rest of the 11, Bhavs, but I think those two are going to be the biggest discussions because you're coming to the summer saying, are those two surplus to requirements already? And part of the reason for me, at least, and I'll be very specific, is because I don't believe that their experience is as real as what we say it is. Because these are two of the most emotional players in the squad that I think biggest frustrations are when you do find a game And it's not their fault that they lost. I don't want that to come across. But part of the frustration is when you look at squad usage and you look at what they represent in the squad, because everybody's an asset, right? And I think I have a little bit more tether with Jesus because he does offer things that this squad in the front line at least lack in terms of ability between the lines and a chaos in there. I look at Zinchenko, and like you said, Alex, we found different ways to progress and do the things that he's benefiting us for, but the things that he hurts us in are so unique in that back line that no one else does. Like, I think, and that's part of the problem. It's part of it.
He's all, you know, they also create, you know, forget the football field for a second. They also create an issue for Mikel off the field because he has to hold them up to your Kiviors, to your younger players and say, these are my senior players. And what message does it, you know, he must be thinking, how am I going to tell Jesus this week he's not playing? How am I going to tell Zinchenko this week he's not playing? When these are guys he's known for. And I also, this is maybe slightly reading into it a little bit too much, or, you know, you could argue it's over-analysis, but when Mikel met these guys, he was an assistant coach, and it sets up a certain relationship. And I wouldn't be surprised if Zinchenko and Jesus, coming from Man City, sort of came with a little bit of a, you need me to help you, don't you? You know, we've come from the title-winning side, let me come in. And I wouldn't be surprised, I don't know, this is his complete guess, but that Mikel feels a little bit like he hasn't quite got the authority over them he does over other players, because they're a little bit older, because they've won things, because they came from Man City, because they had the season they did last season. That can he tell them, you're not at the level. I need you out the team. You're not, you know, and I'm not necessarily casting aspersions on their professionalism, but would Mikel have the relationship with them to be in the way he does with Saka, who he met when he was a teenager, to say, you need to be doing this. Saka's defensive numbers when compared to Mohamed Salah, I looked them up the other day, are crazy. If Saka came from another club and was 25, do you think Arteta could ask him to do that in the same way? I don't think he could. So he's got that level of sort of authority over certain players. And I think Jesus and Zinchenko, I just wonder whether he feels, can I say to them, you're not performing at the level, you're not doing what I'm asking you to, you're going to sit down, and it not be a problem. I think it might be a problem.
And we've heard, just to end, a last article from The Athletic with Gunnar Blog talking about the Zinchenko. That's the only reason I bring it up as a little segment, because that tide and that article doesn't happen 8 months ago, in my opinion. It actually talks about how critical Zinchenko has been to our style of play.
Yeah, and part of me wants that also not go over the top. Not because I know the player has his issues, but let's not forget he helped us get from 5th to 2nd. So he hasn't made Arsenal worse, but this year in terms of how he evolved, he's maybe not evolved that like how we would like him to, and I think teams evolved past him in a sense. Midfield wise though, lads, they're also a bit of a dilemma because Rice is going to start, and Odegaard's going to start as long as he's fit. But do we start Jorginho or Partey? Or does he go Havertz instead?
You want me to go? I mean, again,
maybe we start Granit Xhaka.
Mate, you won the league. Can we borrow him? Xavi, come on. Yeah, mate, I don't know. I mean,
I can't believe he didn't play us today. I can't, not even a minute. I can't believe it.
I've made myself so clear on this, and you know, part of the issue is I think they're both options that currently in form, quote end quotes, neither's ahead of another, in a sense, because even in the cameos that I think Thomas Partey has played, he hasn't been brilliant. But again, I will just center this around Declan Rice. And I will keep it there and keep it nice and short. The impact of having Jorginho in the team in terms of what it does for Declan Rice is far bigger than it is for Thomas Partey in terms of our ability to keep Declan central and to keep Declan feeling the ball more in the game. The more Jorginho is in the team, the less Declan is in the team in possession. And for buying £100 million, I think that's not it. And especially against a Bayern side that, by the way, will have moments of transition. Even if we're a lot more compact, Bayern are that running team. I want Declan and that spine of Gabriel, Saliba, Declan Rice. It gives me security. That tripod has given me security all season. It's given Arsenal fans a reason to say that they're the best out of possession team.
That's out of context.
Yep. We're going to keep going with it because I already mentioned it. So it has given everybody a security out of possession that allows us to say we're the best out of possession team in the world. And I don't think that narrative happens with Jorginho, and for good reason. It's not to say that he's useless. There are Jorginho games. For me, the Allianz, against this running, physical Bayern squad of Lamer, Goretzka. It was never and will never be a game, in my opinion, for him. There's going to be other games for him, just not this one. So despite me not thinking that, by the way, Thomas Partey is going to be excessively a benefit in possession versus Jorginho, I think the way he moves and the way he moves in midfield means that Declan Rice doesn't feel the need to be a water carrier and to babysit the moments with Jorginho and put him outside wide of the block. And the effect on Declan Rice is what I'm more after, as opposed to maybe the in-possession play, because I think both have objectively shown really no impact on this Arsenal squad, especially in the last 3 games that they've been able to play.
Going forwards then. Now, again, we go to another dilemma because you talked about Gabriel Jesus, but also Gabriel Martinelli. Now, he started the first leg against Bayern. It wasn't that effective, and Trossard came on and scored the goal. I think Trossard was fine as well in the last game. So, in terms of that left wing, who is starting? Is it the outlet in Martinelli, or the more technical player who can provide you a moment out of nothing like Trossard?
I think that's going to depend on the approach to the game. To come back to something George was saying earlier, I think... Yeah, I would be a little bit more conservative than we were at the Emirates, but I think it may be a case of saying to Martin Odegaard, feel the game. When you feel Bayern are stepping into being Bayern Munich and the Allianz is getting up, go and press them man for man. And when they're not, when you feel like we've got a little bit more hold of the game, maybe just step back a little bit. It might be a case of a more situational kind of feeling the emotions of the atmosphere. If you feel that the players are losing their touch a little bit, they're losing a little bit of confidence, we're getting pressed back, step onto them. Don't allow them to, put a foot on our neck. So then that's going to slightly dictate how we approach our forward areas. I think for me, Kai Havertz, Saka and Martinelli feels like the 3. Because it's worked so much for us. I think Havertz provides us a reference point, which is going to be useful. I think it's useful to have him stepping from... I actually really liked the tweak yesterday in many ways of Havertz being in midfield and then stepping up almost in possession to become that reference. I like that, but I think it empties the midfield a little bit too much for me, and I'd rather have the solidity in there. And I'd prefer that reference point on the completely on the last line at all times to be able to hit for whoever. And I think there are going to be moments when Bayern have us around our penalty box. And I think the likes of Martinelli and Saka and Havertz, though they're not the world's best transition players, and this is something we should try and fix in the summer, I think there is going to be opportunities. We've seen in the end it be functional. And then again, this is the knife edge that I keep returning to, is that we might look back at the end of the season and say, why did Mikel change it? I'd love to know why. I would love to know why he brought in Jesus yesterday. I'm sure there is a reason. He's not just done it on a whim. But I think to return to what has made us so good during that run would make a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, it's a massive, massive game, right? We know that. It's gargantuan. In terms of the game itself and predictions, feelings, obviously having lost the game against Villa and fans being a bit down and confidence, how confident are you guys actually getting the result? Because personally, even after the Villa result, I'm still fairly optimistic, and that's mainly because normally, away from home, Arsenal are a lot more composed. They seem to be, at times, a bit more pragmatic, but a bit more wiser. Whereas at the Emirates, when the fans are with us, it feels like we get a bit too emotional. Whereas I think away, we're a bit more stoic. And I think Bayern themselves, obviously, they are dangerous because they've got nothing else left to play for, part of the Champions League. And that's where obviously that poses a threat. But seeing the first leg and how competitive we were, I honestly feel like we've got a very good chance of getting through, especially with how the tie is at 0-0.
Yeah, I think... there's an opportunity definitely to do something to kickstart the season, like you said. I think I'm confident in this squad being able to play a game. But the thing is, I need us to take our moments. We have to do the opposite of what we did at Villa in every aspect. In terms of when we're on top, we have to make it count. And I think that when we're defending our own box, we need to make sure that we're resolute. And we return to a lot of the same narratives that we've been all season. If the Arsenal of 2024 show up, we win. And I think it's actually that simple. So I think it'll be a lot tighter of a game. I think I'm going to go to not sit on the fence. I'm going to go for a 2-1. I think that there'll be a tight 2-1 or a 1-0. I can't decide. It'll be a 1-goal margin for me. And I just think that Bayern will score on the transition. I think that we won't be perfect. So yeah, I'm going to go 2-1.
Alex, give me a prediction.
To Arsenal to
It better be positive.
Look, I've said I thought Bayern would knock us out of the 2 legs, but that's because I thought they'd be stronger than us at the Allianz. I have to say the Gnabry, Davies, Coman thing is massive, and could swing the tie. And I think that's been the thing, because I look at that right hand side, look at our right hand side, and I think we could make hay while the sun shines, as they say. Because of that, and because I honestly think the circumstances this weekend are, again, I'm sorry to keep banging the same drum, but we could look back and go, it was the best thing for our running. You know, it was a wake up call. It was right, every single game we've got to be absolutely at it, because there was second half. I'm sure the players came out and a little bit in the back of their minds were thinking, look, we've absolutely spanked them first half. Let's just keep going, keep at it, and probably we didn't respond quick enough. And I think knowing that feeling in our dummies, as Mikel would say, is quite good in a sense. So I don't know. I have a good feeling. I can't see us. I will give you an answer in a second. I can't see us completely capitulating in the way we did in that second half against Villa. I really can't see that, and I don't see that happening. I think it'll be a fine margin. I'm also going to go with a 2-1 to Arsenal. I think it'll be a very tight game. I think it will be a game where we make mistakes. I think it'll be a game where they make mistakes. It'll be a very sort of breathtaking, annoying type of game. But I just have a feeling we'll edge it because of the injuries and because of the momentum coming in from Saturday. Sunday. I think we'll be angry. I do think we'll be angry. I think we'll respond. Yeah,
I agree. I think 2-1's the logical result here, and I think it's very much possible as well. And it's exciting because look, we're a game away from the Champions League semi-finals, and I think it also poses the question with right now the league being in City's hands as things stands. There are some fans saying, look, we are still in the Champions League. We are potentially a game away from the semi-finals. Do you put your focus into that a bit more? I'm not saying that you don't focus on the Premier League, but you put a bit more focus into that, a bit more emphasis into that, going, lads, look, this Champions League is possible, and we need to win something this season.
I don't think you need to say that to them. I think they know what happened on Sunday. They know what happened. They know how you can't make mistakes like that in this running. And I think Declan Rice said, having just been in the dressing room, I think he said something along the lines of, we said that if we can't win this game, don't lose it. And I think they know what they did. I really quite strongly believe that this is a different group of players mentally. I know it feels, the problem is right now that sounds like a mental thing to say because it looks like we're about to do the thing we do every single season. And maybe we are going to lose, right? But I don't think we'll lose in the same manner. I think the manner of the loss yesterday was the main issue. That's why we started projecting forward, because it was so lifeless. At 70 minutes, I was like, we're not winning this. I didn't think we'd lose it, but I was like, we're not winning this. It was just that sort of game. I don't think we'll see that very often. I don't think we'll see the whimper in the same way we have. We might not hit our targets. And as I've always said, I don't think we'll win the league. I've been looking at the Champions League, honestly. But I think the manner in which we lose is going to be so key, and I can't see these players going on the type of run we have over the last couple of seasons. I just can't see it. I can't see Arteta allowing it. I don't think we've got it in us to do that anymore. As I say, we might lose, but I don't think we'll lose in the same way.
Mm. It's very much a thing where, because we've got everyone available as well, it gives me extra confidence. Whereas lastly, look, when you got Holding at the back, you're going to have trouble. We've got everyone fit and available, and the bench is strong as well. And I think in this game specifically, the bench could be pivotal. We could see the game locked at 1-1, and then someone like Trossard comes off the bench, scores a goal, Jesus as well. I want to see more from the subs for sure. But in terms of Mikel Arteta, George, entering obviously now the most important part of the season and having had the defeat, what do you want to see from him personally? Apart from obviously subscribing to the Cannon podcast. And like
he does.
That's why he's going to change, mate. That's why he's brilliant. Yeah. We've got the Nolly. I think I just want him to be proactive in terms of his management of the squad. And I think, for example, Bayern, I know I've said that I probably prefer a Martinelli start only because I saw him not start versus Villa. I look at the first sub, I don't want it to be Trossard, it has to be Jesus. His history in the competition, his ability to create, and his form in this competition is second to none in the squad in terms of our forwards. Make that proactive step. If things aren't going well, select the player that has a history in the position. I want things to make sense. I don't want us to sit there and be surprised where if the game is approaching a certain way where we need a goal, and you see the team lacking inspiration, make a change early. Don't wait it out. And I think that proactivity is just something that he lacks currently. And I think that could be from a squad management, a physical fitness perspective. It could be from a substitution perspective. That is something that I think has been a major weakness of his for his entire managerial career, I would argue. So just be proactive in terms of either what the team needs, but also fitness or physicality wise.
Okay, well, intriguing few days to come.
Hold on. Where's your prediction, son? Hold on.
I said 2-1. Listen, man.
Did say 2-1.
Listen, I did say 2-1. Georgia boy.
Goal scorers?
I did say 2-1s. Goal scorers, David Raya and William Saliba.
Come on.
David Raya, last
You know what? We haven't done it. I think a Gabriel header. We haven't scored a set piece in a while. I can see that coming. I can see that they're not very great on set pieces. So I see that and a little Saka special.
Saka special. I will be looking forward to that.
Saka sauce. We will be there.
Yeah, we will be there. Allianz Wednesday, we will see you there. And after that, of course, there will be an interaction on YouTube. Anyways, guys, let's recover. Let's go again. Go for your runs and meditate. Listen to our podcast. Listen to this podcast. Do what you need to do, and we will see you on Wednesday. Take out. Peace.
Peace.